that we can record our meeting, and we do post them so that folks can tune in outside of this. I think I'm going to click mute and try to mute Irene because I just heard some feedback. And let's see, I'm going to share my screen so that I can go over our agenda for the meeting. So you should be able to see my screen. I'm actually just on our Spenard Community Council website, and I hope folks can go here and navigate. We try to do our best to have all of the meeting handouts and things we would have in person. They're just all on our website, and it's a little hard to find. So we try to make it easy with having all of our Zoom information for our current meeting. And then if you click on agenda, it'll take you to all of these different navigating items on our right menu bar, but it's got our agenda, previous minutes from our December meeting, our meeting handouts. It takes you to this tab that's other SCC documents. We have a couple draft resolutions to consider tonight, and we've got them posted on our site. And then I added this today. We have a new resolution that we just created today to consider, so we'll talk a little bit more about that. But this is how you can find everything pertaining to this meeting, and it'll take you to all of these different pages so that you can download the items. I've already done that. So here is our agenda for today. I did my orientation, so now I'm just kind of going over our agenda. We'll talk a little bit about just expectations at our community council meetings and give another heads up about our executive board election for next month. We also, after the last meeting, we decided to invite, up to 2 of our state legislators to come and give updates. And I'm excited to share that we do have Senator Costello and Representative Drummond with us tonight. So we'll turn it over to them to give an update about statewide issues pertaining to Spenard. And we'll do this throughout the session so that we can keep contact and connection with folks who are in Juneau, heading to Juneau. And then we'll go into our regular brief reports about school board, the airport. I'm not sure that we have Sergeant Bouchou yet with the police department, but hopefully he may join. And then we'll have our assembly report with Cameron Presverdia, and we'll have a longer discussion with him about potentially some steps to be able to appoint a representative to the seat that Austin Quinn Davidson has left. So as she's serving as acting mayor, so we'll talk about that. We've also brought our traffic calming resolution back from our December meeting so that we can briefly go over that and hopefully adopt it. An update about the Spenard Road rehab, and then we do have time at the end for community announcements. And it's a really good opportunity if you are new to the meeting, if you do want to share who you are, what issues you care about, if there are any events or opportunities in Spenard, this is a good time for us to have a good conversation there. So with all that, that is the overview of the agenda. And we also had our minutes posted from our December meeting. And so with that, I will entertain a motion to approve our consent agenda, which is these 2 items. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, I heard Tom move and
Peggy.
Peggy second. Thank you. Anything to change? Okay. So with that, I'm just going to briefly share a little bit about just bringing back some expectations about our community council meetings process and decorum. Our meetings on Zoom have been going really well, but it's also a new process for all of us. So we're trying to make sure that we're respectful and connecting with folks in a good way. So as an executive board, we just wanted to circle back on that, especially with everything happening nationally, in particular today, but it's really been ongoing. We just want to recognize that it's really important that we stay engaged in our local issues and that we do it in a productive way that's respectful to everyone here, because we are all neighbors and we all want to connect and make our communities better. So with that, we just want to have a couple reminders that the Community Council is a neutral and nonpartisan organization. We don't take a position where we endorse a candidate or like to see different things like open campaigning. We do often invite candidates or policy issues to come and present and share out, but we just want to make sure that we do it in a way that is balanced and gets information to folks. And so, with our upcoming municipal elections, we do work with West Anchorage community councils and some of the other areas to put on a candidate forum, and are still planning to do that with Zoom. So we will be putting something together. We'll have a really focused time around it. And then we also just wanted to make sure that that we are respectful and have a good dialogue with each other. So we have changed a couple things within Zoom. One of them is just removing the private chat feature within the chat options. We want to make sure there's not a lot of kind of sidebar conversations, like back and forth conversations that take away from participating in the meetings. And we want to make sure that we are civil and above board and really connecting with folks in a good way. So we've changed that and are trying to, we'll try to see how that goes, and we can revisit it, but want to see if there are other suggestions or ideas that folks have to please let us know. But that is how we conduct our meetings as a community council, and that's how we want to continue doing it, even remotely on Zoom. And so with that, it's also election time for our executive board for the community council. We mentioned this last meeting, but we do have our executive board elections in February. And we typically have a secret ballot in person where members of the community council can fill out a ballot that we have prepared ahead of time. And with voting remotely, we're not sure if it's going to be able to be a secret ballot, but our executive board is doing our best to try to figure it out. But we do want to have a slate of candidates already in place so that we can figure out the voting process. And our current executive board is interested in continuing to serve in our current positions, but we don't want that to preclude anyone who may be interested in stepping up. So if you are interested, we do ask that you please let us know. If not by the end of this meeting, but by email this week, you can send an email to spenardcc@gmail.com, and we can make sure that we figure out the ballot process. And Tani has a great question in there about voting. Voting for the community council there's another step. It's not just if you live or have a business within our community council boundaries. You are a member, you're a resident or a business member, that if you do, but you're a voting member if you've attended one meeting in the last 12 months. So if you've attended this meeting, if you're here right now, you're eligible to vote next month. If you attended a meeting 5 months ago and that's it, that's okay, you're still eligible to vote. So we do have to just have a little bit of a process around eligibility for membership and voting, and having the candidate slate so that we can do it in a good way. So with that, I hope to hear more folks interested. If not this next month, maybe within the next year, we could get you on board to start getting involved. And I have one more note about also some of the decorum around our meetings. We are doing our best to be accessible in a difficult time when everything is remote. And with our Zoom opportunity, we want to make sure that folks attend and participate through the Zoom platform. It came to our attention after the last meeting that there was concern about somebody live streaming our meeting on their own personal social media accounts. And that's something that doesn't respect everybody's privacy and isn't something that everyone was informed about. So even as a community council, when we did meet in person, we did used to live stream it, but we let everybody know and folks could get out of the frame if they didn't want to be part of that live stream. So we do ask that you do not live stream our Zoom meetings. If you want people to participate, share the Zoom information, and that would be a good way to get people involved and engaged and respect everybody's privacy and safety as well. Okay, I think that is all of the bullet points I had listed out to touch base on. Thanks to our executive board for having a good conversation and discussion around this. And if you have any questions, you can follow up with us afterwards. And so with that, I'm going to move us into our state legislator reports, and would like to welcome Senator Mia Costello. And then after Senator Costello, Representative Harriet Drummond, but I'd like to give Senator Costello the floor.
Great, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you, Lindsay. I really appreciate your running such a great community council meeting and setting some great ideas forward at the beginning. It's really been quite a year in 2020, and it's starting out to be a little bit challenging this year too, but I just wanted to say that I'm really honored to represent you and our neighbors in the state Senate. And I wanted to let everybody know that on January 20th, it's the first day after session starts. So session will start on January 19th. And then on January 20th at 6 p.m., I'll be having a constituent Zoom meeting, and everybody's welcome. I will get that information out to you. It'll be on my Facebook page. So if you're not receiving my emails, you can go to my Facebook page or sign up to get those emails, and that information will be sent out shortly. And also my phone number for anyone who wants to call is 269-0117, and that's a local Anchorage number, so that it'll be forwarded to Juneau, so you do not have to make a long distance call. Just call 269-0117, and I usually call you back that same day or as soon as I can. And right now, staff and some legislators are in the process of moving to Juneau, so our computers are going. There was a first ferry that left, I think the day before yesterday. And so we are definitely in the process of starting. I am actually going to be heading to Juneau about the 17th, right before session starts. So I will be around in town and, here for phone calls, or if anyone would like to, to chat with me before I go. But I'm looking forward to the constituent meeting, and I welcome everybody to participate in that. As far as what I've been doing, Senator Tom Begich introduced a reading bill last session, and it did not pass, but while it went through the process, I was able to amend it to create a teacher retention and retirement working group. And so that actually went forward, and I sat on that committee. A lot of teachers were on it, and we talked about ways to retain teachers and challenges that teachers have. And so we will be coming out with a bunch of recommendations that the legislature will be looking at. We have not yet set our committees. We are still trying to organize. Those meetings will continue until Juneau, the session starts, and I am hoping to be the chair of the Labor and Commerce Committee, and I would like to continue on the Education Committee, since I was a former classroom teacher, and I have children in the Anchorage School District, so I'd like to be on that committee too. The other thing that I've been working on is the expansion of the South Air Park, and there's been a lot of concern about the impact that will have. We certainly appreciate the economic development opportunities, but at the same time, we want to make sure that the access and the traffic and what have you is something that the neighbors have input in. So there's going to be a meeting about that tomorrow at 6:30 at night, and I have asked DOT to prepare a traffic study that would include the Sand Lake area and Raspberry and Jewel Lake, because it will be impacted, and that traffic will then head into Spenard also. And I haven't heard whether or not that's going to go through, but I do plan to put in a capital budget requests in the legislative process, so that if the department doesn't have the funding for that, and usually that's handled, it's triggered by an access to a state road that will trigger a traffic study. But I think that with all the development in the area, that it would be a good idea to have more information about the traffic that we're looking at and what's going to happen in terms of increase in traffic, in our neighborhood. So with that, I just wanted to, again, thank you for the honor of representing you. And if you have any questions, please let me know. I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. And I'll add into the chat a link to the community meeting tomorrow about the airport development you just mentioned. And we do have John Johansen on in a little bit to also share an update on behalf of the airport. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Representative Drummond, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, thank you. We're, as Senator Costello said, we're in a period of transition with folks relocating to the capital city. In fact, my staffer, George Ascott, who lives on Lois Drive, is a Spenard Community Council member and normally attends this meeting as a member, is on the Kennecott Ferry in the middle of the Gulf of Alaska right now. And I just got an email that ship has been delayed even more. It was supposed to arrive in Juneau today, Wednesday, at about 3 p.m. and it's not arriving until tomorrow evening at about 8 p.m. It was delayed because of storms, serious storm activity in the Gulf, and it sounds like they're having a slow trip to Juneau as it is. My car is also on that ferry, along with the vehicles of a number of other legislators and staffers. We all made the trek to Whittier the other day and spent a lot more time in Whittier than we expected to, waiting for the ferry to load. There was also supposed to be a House Finance Committee meeting this afternoon in which there was going to be a presentation on the governor's budget as assessed by Larry Pursley, a former legislative staffer, and by Legislative Finance's new director, Alexi Painter. But it unfortunately was postponed. I'm not sure if that had anything to do with the activity in the nation's capital today, but I would have liked to have been able to talk to you a little bit about what the budget process might be, what the budget forecast might be, how the professionals think things are going to go this session. And again, as Senator Costello said, the House is not yet organized either. We're kind of looking at each other across this line of 20 members on each side, and one of the seats is still tied up in a court challenge, but we think Liz Snyder is going to prevail. I hope to be in the majority once again and continue my work as the chair of the Education Committee, Community and Regional Affairs. And I'm also a member of Transportation Committee. I'm keeping an eye on the traffic calming program. That email came into my inbox here in the last couple of days. And I see that none of Spenard's street recommendations made the cut. I'm not sure quite why that is. It looks like the public works folks, the traffic engineer, assessed them as not having as serious a speeding problem, from what I can tell on the data. But I will be keeping an eye out for opportunities to improve Spenard's streets. And I'm glad to see that Fireweed Lane is proceeding. I know Spenard shares a little bit of that street, and hopefully we'll be able to get some money in the capital budget to do the right job with that street. I'm also involved in the Midtown congestion plan. That doesn't necessarily impact Spenard, but it is going to impact everybody who drives the Seward Highway and the major east-west roads in our district. And that's going to be an ongoing project over the next several years. That's pretty much all I have to say. I think I'm leaving for Juneau over the weekend or early next week, and happy to participate this evening, and glad to see all of you folks who have been holding up your end in Spenard for so many years. I really appreciate your involvement with the community.
Yeah, thank you. We have time for one question, so I'll take Tani's because I see your hand is up.
Yep. On the Transportation Committee, I'm wondering if perhaps you can talk about adequate sidewalk clearing for the state of Alaska perspective. I think the Muni does a really great job of clearing sidewalks as soon as there's snow, but consistently what happens, especially on Tudor and Northern Lights, which are all state-owned roads, is that they clear the roads and then they don't come through and clear the sidewalks. I think that maybe a valid conversation is to clear at least one side of a sidewalk at all times so that people can safely walk, especially as we continue to push alternative forms of transportation and keeping people safe on these roads. So that's just been an ongoing, and I haven't been out driving much, but every time I do go out after a snowstorm and then in the weeks after, it's very rarely plowed. And I know I talked to the transportation people last year and they said because of budget cuts, the only time I don't know if they were supposed to admit this, but the only time they really plow is when somebody calls to complain. And I don't think that that's a fair way to do things for community members.
I agree. Thank you, Tani. I will bring that up with the Transportation Department when they make their presentations to the Transportation Committee on budget issues. Thanks again. I agree. The city does do a much better job. They're much more pedestrian focused. The state DOT, unfortunately, seems to be focused on vehicles rather than people. Even though we all know that all those vehicles contain people, and once you get out of your car, you become a pedestrian and deserve absolutely as much attention as the vehicles do.
Great, thank you both. There are questions about moving the Capitol or using Zoom, and I know that those are on long-term conversations, and especially with the harrowing ferry trip, we wish you all the best with that. Thank you both. So I'll move us into some of our local reports, and I'll start with our school board representative, Star Marset. Thanks for joining us, Star.
Thank you for having me. Of course, there's a lot going on. I want to start out with ASD has begun vaccinating for the COVID. Currently, it's phase 1A, tier 3, which is nurses, select SPED, special education staff, and we are also in phase 1B, tier 1, which is 65 and older. We have approximately 2,000 vaccines, and we'll be giving those out in 1.5 weeks, and those are open to community members also. The other thing that I wanted to announce is that with the beginning of school on the 19th, we now have COVID testing capability. So we're going to be offering symptomatic testing offered at 11 schools. This will be with Capstone, ASBHC, Visit Health, and Abbott ID Now. We're also going to be offering asymptomatic testing offered 11 through the 15th of January for all school staff and students. And then any walk up to any established community testing site will be available. We're also looking at getting some COVID-19 relief funding. 54 billion for K-2 schools. It looks like Anchorage or the state of Alaska will probably get about 159 million. The state can keep 10% of that, and it'll be divided up according to tier 1 schools. And of course, there'll be instructions on how we can use that. The good news about this is the funds can be used through September of 2023 for the next 2 years. So that's really nice. The other thing, just to let you know, there's going to be federal government is offering 10 billion in child care funding assistance, 3.2 billion for monthly subsidies for internet service. It's going to go straight to the families. And those are just some highlights there. As you know, we are starting school back up on January 19th. That's going to be our pre-K through second grade and some of our K through 6 self-contained special needs programs. This will all also be Whaley. There will be some third graders. We're looking at combo classrooms, and instead of splitting them up, we're offering third graders to come back with their class. We'll also be starting select students who need extra support with beginning in-person small group classes, and that will be for middle and high school. It'll be 5.5 hours each day, with Wednesday being an online learning. And then we'll look at the beginning of fourth quarter for middle and high school students to return to in-person school. The thing that I wanted to, someone was talking a little bit earlier about ice rinks. And so I just wanted to mention that there are Airport Heights, Bowman, Creekside Park, Scenic Park, Clatt, Lakewood, Taku, Fire Lake have all been chosen because they have outdoor lights. And we're very thankful that the Anchorage Parks and Recs have used COVID aid bill to contract regular maintenance for the rinks to give another outdoor recreation to Alaskans during the pandemic. We are presenting to our legislators on Friday our board goals and guardrails and our priorities for the next session and what we hope to attain for our school district. And I tried to make that as short as I could.
Thank you, Star. I will ask people to just add their questions into the chat box. I'm just keeping an eye on time. I do see that George has his hand raised, or maybe Amber, and so I'll go to you for one question.
Thank you so much. I'm just curious. So my vaccine injury runs in my family, and we are not going to be vaccinating for COVID, and I'm worried that my kids are not going to be allowed in school. What can you speak on that, please?
We cannot enforce anyone or cannot ask anyone. We can't say that you have to have a vaccination to come back to school at this point. So there will be individuals that will not have a vaccination returning to school, even as it moves on, just like we do with other vaccinations. So we will still continue to mitigate for those individuals and for everyone else in the school, as long as there's a risk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just worried because there's so much negative things going out towards people who maybe don't want it or can't take it. And I'm just worried that, you know, I don't want my kids to be affected negatively, and I don't want them to be bullied because of this.
And that would certainly be my hope too. And as a board member, and I know as Dr. Bishop, that would be something that we would not tolerate.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. I'm going to keep us moving, and thank you, Star. I'll turn it over to John Johansen with the airport report.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. I really have very little to say tonight. We are continuing to deal with the coronavirus at the airport. We are trying to gear up and work with DHSS for what we think is going to be a busier summer season this summer than we had last. Hopefully, well, potentially we may not be screening folks by that time, depending on what happens with the spread of the virus and the vaccinations, but that's up to DHSS. Lakewood Seaplane Base is now operating as a frozen lake, and aircraft are coming in and out, so please stay off it and let your friends know that. It is not a community access area. It is an aerodrome. We're looking for a bunch of employees, and in the airport update, which is available on our website, there are about 8 or 10 jobs there that are listed that we're looking to fill. Most of them are maintenance type people and heavy equipment operators. And that's really all I have. Lindsay asked that I say a little bit about the proposed development along the south side of the airport near Raspberry Road. We are still kind of waiting for the prospective tenant to work out more details on their proposed development, exactly how it's gonna get laid out. Yeah, we are having a meeting. I should say the Sand Lake Community Council has organized a meeting for tomorrow night. And I believe anybody's welcome to Zoom into that meeting. And I think it's going to be kind of a repeat of previous meetings with more questions of the developer and the airport. I heard Senator Costello mentioning a traffic impact analysis. That would be a requirement on any development along Raspberry Road or along any state road or city road for that matter. And so the developer will be required to do a traffic impact analysis. I'm not sure who Mia was speaking with DOT, but and I don't know if that would be an independent analysis or not, but certainly the developer will be required to have a traffic impact analysis done. That's all I have. Be happy to entertain any questions if I can.
I think we have one question from Peggy or Bob, and then
Hi,
we'll
John.
move on.
It's
Hi,
me,
Peggy.
Peggy. Hi,
Peggy.
John. One of the questions that I have is, as things go along with the airport and this development, will you be having meetings other than like at Sand Lake Community Council? But, you know, like you used to have them over at the airport hotel, the West End. Yeah, so that all three community councils can come instead of just one community council?
Well, for the near term, we're probably not having any face-to-face meetings, but
Right.
for these developments are private developments. They're not airport developments. The projects that we've had where we've had public meetings have been mostly public meetings involved with either our noise compatibility study or master plan, or when we did the 7 right extension to the west, we had public meetings. This is a private development. They are and they are leasing the land from the airport and doing the development. If there are requirements of the FAA for any type of NEPA public involvement, they will have to comply with that. But the airport itself isn't planning any public meetings associated with these private developments.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you.
I don't see Sergeant Bishu, so I think we're going to turn it over to Cameron Presverdia to share his assembly report. And I put it just as we could also blend into the topic about a process to potentially appoint someone into Austin Quinn Davidson's seat. So Cameron, I'll let you give an update, and we can also just blend it into that topic as well. Thanks.
Great. It's good to see everybody. Happy New Year. I have way more to report on than I have time to report on. So one of the things that I'm working on is a written report that I could submit each meeting that has a lot more comprehensive information. So look for that at our at your next meeting. So a few things. I did want to mention that Sand Lake Community Council did pass a resolution related to the airport project, and this is something, Lindsay, you might want to get a hold of and look at and share with your members. As you all know, EO 17 began on January 1st, easing up order, and it loosened some of the restrictions while keeping certain limits in place. To prevent the virus from reaching the extremely high levels that we experienced in November. So that started January 1st and will remain in place until it's modified. That's a larger conversation, but one of the things I want to mention is that there was a great deal of consultation with CHAR and with more than 100 hospitality owners and leaders, as well as all of the other normal folks that they work with, epidemiologists and hospitals and business owners and so on. And so that's currently in place. I won't go through all of the data for COVID. It's all on our website, but I would just say there's the three categories that we often use are epidemiology, healthcare capacity, and public health capacity. And still we're at a red, so we use red, yellow, and green. Epidemiology is still at a red. Healthcare capacity is actually improving. I think the last number I saw that there were 19 available beds as opposed to previously I reported, I think there was 2. But the healthcare capacity is still at a red as well. I wanted to report a little bit on some of the CARES Act. I did a lot of reporting on this last time, but I just want to hit a few of them. Star mentioned this, but the new federal aid bill will have an influx of additional rental assistance for our city, and that the total amount there is 25 billion. But we will be receiving a fair chunk of that. And the interesting thing about it is my understanding is that the city of Anchorage will likely be able to get that money directly, and so not having to go through the state. As I learn more about that, I'll bring that back. We continue to fund all the different projects that came out of the original 156 million for CARES Act. The hospitality relief work is continuing. There's a program that we've been working on since the end of September. It's called the COVID-19 Peer Leader Navigator Program. I wanted to share a little bit about that. We've reported over 733 hours in direct peer support and have helped 605 individuals access services and information in 66 unique, accountable ways. The main topics that we're helping folks with are food supplies, health and information, childcare, K-12, which other than English is more than 85% of the time. So it's in a number of other languages, including Spanish, Somali, Samoan, Tongan, and more. I wanted to give an update on the property acquisitions, and I mentioned this the last time. It is official that America's Best is not being considered anymore. The costs came back for that and were just not feasible. What I can tell you is that they are actively working to find an alternate location and looking in the same general area. And there's nothing to report in terms of specific locations yet, but I hope to see something soon come out. It sounds like that they're in conversation with a number of facility owners. That's the same as the Alaska Club on Tutor. They're still working on finding an alternate location that would be in the same area. As I mentioned last time, the Golden Lion has been purchased. And the RFP to identify the provider for that should be completed next week. We've already taken possession of the building and security is there. And so I have been told that it's likely that could be up and running as early as the end of first quarter of this year. So they're moving quickly on that. Let's see. Couple of other items in my short time here. I wanted to talk a little bit about, we at our last meeting postponed an effort to put funding police technology and body cams on the ballot to be voted on. And me and a few other assembly members are trying to work to fund that internally. And so that'll be a conversation we're having at our next meeting. I think it was really believed that it was really vital that we get this technology and that there was a lot of support around body cams, and that by putting it out to a vote, it created a great deal of risk when it was the responsibility of the administration to ensure that this went forward. Let's see, we'll talk a lot about the West Side seat at the next part. I guess one other thing I just wanted to mention, I'm co-chair of the Public Safety Committee, and we had a really significant presentation today on missing and murdered Indigenous people. And it was incredible to see the amount of work that is going on there. And so if you want more information on that, I can provide that as well. I think that's probably a good place for me to stop, unless there are questions on that, and then I can move right into the conversation on the West Side seat.
Okay, thank you. I will take one question from Pamela. Go ahead.
Thank you. Cameron, I would like to know, are they giving seniors vaccinations at the health department on 9th?
I believe so. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that they are. I mean, I can check on that pretty easily.
If you won't mind, because on the site when they opened it for seniors, it says that, you know, don't call them if you're not any of these areas, and it happens to not include seniors, which is in that upper tier.
Great. I will get that information pretty quick, and I'll get it back
Thank
to
you.
Lindsay, and she can just broadcast it out.
Great. Thanks so much.
Sounds good. Thank you. So Cameron, let's talk about the Austin Quinn Davidson seat. It's a conversation our executive board had with Cameron, Austin, and our municipal attorney after she became acting mayor, with questions about if or how we could have this happen. We had some conversations at the past couple community council meetings where folks wanted to make sure we had full representation on the assembly. And so at the start of the year and the work that you're doing, Cameron, I know there's some maybe a path forward. So I'll turn it over to you to just share more about that.
Sure. Yeah. Let me give a little bit of background. And I don't know how many followed the last assembly meeting, but we had a conversation at this meeting. I've had conversations with probably 30 people who are concerned about that. I've been concerned about it from the very beginning, and have been working with our municipal attorney on potential pathways forward. A couple of other members of the assembly brought a last-minute resolution forward at the last meeting. They hadn't worked with me, or they hadn't worked with the municipal attorney on that, and so it was voted down in terms of whether it was put on the agenda. But at that meeting, I committed to them and said, hey, if you guys want to work on this, I want to work on it too, because it's really important to me and the folks that I represent. So I met with both of them and really tried to understand their perspective. And my sense is that they really just wanted to make sure that this seat was filled temporarily while Austin was serving as his temporary mayor. So, but they said, go ahead and take the lead on it. And so I continued to work with the municipal attorney, and we came up with what I sent out to Lindsay, and I can walk through that. It's not a revision of what they brought forward, because they brought forward a resolution. And based on my understanding is that this requires an actual code change. And so I'll do my best to sort of explain what happened. We have in our charter, we have a section on it that specifically defines what a vacancy is, when a vacancy happens. And the case of a mayor stepping down and a chair filling that seat, that role temporarily, is not considered a vacancy in our charter. So the information that's in our code that talks about how you fill a vacancy is invalid because it's not considered a vacancy. And so that's where we were stuck. And so originally we thought we had to actually have a charter change in order to do anything about this, which would require a vote of the people to do that. Our current strategy, or my current strategy, is that we can simply add a section onto the municipal code that says, just for this particular happening. So if the mayor is no longer there, and if the chair fills that, then the assembly they don't have to, but they can fill that seat temporarily. And so the other provision that I put in there is that that person can't serve as vice chair or chair, but they have all other normal abilities and powers that person would have. And then, of course, as soon as the person who's filling the mayor's seat temporarily is finished, then their term would end, and the mayor would and the temporary mayor would go back. So this that's essentially what this does, is it creates a new section of the code for this particular circumstance. And so that's probably that's probably what I should just start with. And I expect a pretty significant debate about this on the 12th. And I've talked to folks who are for it and against it. And so I can speak to sort of both sides of that, if that helps. But that's probably a good first explanation, and then we can have more of a dialogue and I can answer questions.
Sure, and you can see that I just shared my screen to have this draft assembly ordinance that Cameron described, and I'll scroll down eventually so folks can read. And I also added the link into our chat box that has this draft ordinance and the memorandum of the memo about what the ordinance is about. So this is something that folks had brought up during our council meetings as wanting an opportunity to have somebody take on the position of the West Anchorage Assembly seat while Austin is serving. So we wanted to make sure to bring this forward tonight, since the Assembly will discuss it next week.
Yeah.
So if you have questions, feel free to
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
I
go
was
ahead.
going to, I think that's a great first question, because, so let me first say that, oh, sorry. So thanks for that question. Let me first say that when the Assembly brought up the topic of whether to have a special election or not, that the Assembly attorney, the municipal assembly, or the municipal attorney, and one of the attorneys, one of the head attorneys within the Department of Law, all agreed on the interpretation that we are not required to have a special election, that is an option. So, and it's the determination of the Assembly whether to have the special election or not. You may or may not agree with that, and there are members of the Assembly that do not agree with that. And so, but that was their determination. And so, based on that, and based on what was brought forward to the Assembly voted to not have a special election, and to wait until the regular election to fill the role of mayor. So that's what I'm basing this on. So the question of if we would have a special election, then this wouldn't be necessary. I actually think it's two separate issues. I think that there needs to be a conversation about whether the Assembly should be required to have a special election under whatever circumstances. For instance, if there's a certain period of time, 2 months or 3 months or whatever that period of time is. And that's another topic that we need to address in terms of whether or not a special election should happen, regardless of the Assembly's vote. This tackles the issue of the fact that the code and the charter don't currently have a method to fill that vacant seat when it happens. So I expect that question that you've asked to be part of the conversation on the 12th. So.
Okay, thanks, Cameron. Jared, if you have a different question, go ahead, and then folks, please keep filling out the chat, and we can go to some questions there too.
Nope, I'm good. I meant to take my hand down. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. Cameron, can you give the timing? So I believe the Assembly will take up this ordinance next week on Tuesday.
Yeah, so it's my intention, and it's my intention to bring this forward for consideration on the 12th. And so if it passes, then we would follow the current code in terms of how vacancies are filled when a and an assembly seat is vacated. And so it would be the same process that we would go through, and that's outlined pretty clearly in our code. And so we would begin that process right away.
Okay, thank you. Representative Drummond, do you have a question?
No, but I just wanted to offer a comment in that I was in the same position that Cameron is in right now. In 2009, I was the Assembly Vice Chair when Mayor Begich left to join the U.S. Senate, and my partner in West Anchorage, Matt Clayman, became acting mayor. I became acting Assembly Chair, and I was left without my partner in West Anchorage to serve a dual member district. The way we solve that problem, and we're at that point now in early January that Cameron faces the next 6 months without his partner in West Anchorage, the current acting mayor. We solved that problem by, I used Matt Clayman's Assembly Aid funding. I had 2 Assembly aides to assist me in serving the citizens of West Anchorage for that period. And in addition to serving as chair at the same time, it was quite a handful of work, but we survived. I also don't agree that there should have been a special election for mayor. That would have been extremely confusing to have 2 mayoral elections happening at this practically simultaneously for a very short period of time. I'll probably be traveling when the assembly meeting happens, so I won't be able to weigh in. So thank you for letting me offer a personal perspective.
Great, thanks, Representative. And it looks like, Tom, you may have a question.
Just a comment that we do have a person that has previously served on the assembly as a alternate or a temporary. That's Ira Perman. And also right here in the Spenard Community Council, we've got Bob Auth, who's an attorney, has been involved with the community council and municipal matters for many, many years. So there's qualified people readily available. And I think that the Spenard Community Council should recommend one of those to the assembly if the ordinance happens to pass.
Thanks, Tom. That's part of our long-term, how do we get a Spenard resident to serve on the assembly? I'm not seeing any other questions specific about this ordinance. And so I'll take it from here about a proposed action that our council could take tonight. Because we had heard from so many residents about an interest to have this seat filled while Austin is serving as acting mayor, our executive board talked about putting together just a brief resolution to support this resolution. It's posted on our website, and I also have it shared on the screen here. And it's very brief and just essentially saying that the Spenard Community Council would support the Assembly adopting this ordinance, and that we would support the Assembly appointing a qualified person into this position. We wanted to potentially bring this forward because the Assembly will be meeting to discuss this next week. We won't have a meeting for the rest of the month. And so just with the timely nature of it, we put this in front of us, and Tom has moved to adopt the resolution. Do we have a second? And then we can have a discussion.
I second.
Tawny seconds, thank you. Any discussion or changes to this draft? Tawny has her hand raised. Tawny, help me out.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that when all of this happened, I spent quite a few hours looking into kind of having this vacancy. I'm speaking as a personal community member also. And I'm grateful that you are taking this up. I support it. I think it's fair. And I think that it plans for a situation like this in the future, especially when this is the second time that this has happened. It's not unreasonable to think it's a possibility at this point. So I support us passing a resolution in support of this. And I think this is a fair way to do it versus having to go through a charter change.
Mhm. Okay, well, so the way that we're trying to make sure that we capture votes by Zoom is to have a Google form that Arena is going to put into the chat for everybody. In order to be a voting member with the community council, like I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, you have to be a resident or a business owner with an address in our Spenard boundaries. And in order to vote, you also have to have attended one community council meeting in the last 12 months. So this Google form is a way for us to help collect all of that and make sure that you're a resident, that you can are a voting member, and then we can tally the votes, or Arena can tally the votes while I try to keep the conversation going. But in order to keep things rolling, the link is in the chat from Arena. Please click on it and vote if you're a voting member. But there is still some questions. So Paul, I'll turn it over to you.
Sorry about that. Just real brief, do we have any input, like for candidates like Tom mentioned, to have them put forward by the assembly, or is it pretty much just up to the assembly, whoever they want?
Oh,
Yeah, Cameron.
I'm in
Yeah.
support of the resolution, you know, as it stands, but that was my bigger question.
Yeah, I mean, the ultimate decision is the assembly's decision, but I would say that recommendations by either individual community members or community councils are important, and so I would encourage that. I think that the more that this council and others can identify potential candidates, it makes our job a lot easier. And one of the things that I've said is that, you know, we really want people who can represent these neighborhoods. And I think the best people to determine who could represent the neighborhoods is people that live in the neighborhood. So anyway, but that would be I think that to answer your question briefly, it's all ultimately the vote of the assembly, but I would really encourage folks to make recommendations.
Could we add to the resolution just 2 recommendations that Tom mentioned?
The 2 people.
Correct.
I think that we could get into a very big conversation about who to recommend.
That's why we're here.
Let's see, Pamela Rager just said she moves Mr. Oth as a recommendation. That's Bob Oth. Bob, do you accept?
I do not.
Got it.
Not interested.
Got it.
That's all I'm not gonna run an anti-campaign, but I'm not interested.
Sure, and I mean, Ira Perman is also not on our call either. So it just becomes a little difficult making those nominations.
But time is kind of the essence, isn't it?
Yeah, it should be considered like the assembly would consider this ordinance over this.
So is this something Cameron
couple
could bring
weeks.
forward to the assembly I'm not really sure. We're talking about the 12th, this is coming up?
Yeah, this would be this ordinance would be considered on the 12th, and then following that, if it's passed, then we would go through our normal process. I mean, I can tell you that Ira Perman has already served as a temporary person on the assembly, so he's a pretty likely name to come forward because he's already gone through that process in the past. So. But yeah, any way that you guys want to go. I think that like I said, if you want to add names, or if you just want to give me names that I can bring forward, I'm not sure it has to be on a resolution, but I would really appreciate knowing that, because we have to go through our proper process of vetting them and all of that. But the more names that I have, the more that I can bring forward.
Or the fewer.
Well, I mean, the good names. I mean, I don't want just random names. I want
Exactly.
folks who live in this neighborhood and are qualified.
I'll defer to Tom on that stuff. Thank you, Lindsay.
Yeah, no, thank you. What I would propose is we consider the draft resolution as is, and maybe as a community council, we could put together, we could in this discussion have a slate of names or nominations that I could maybe then follow up with or share with Cameron from here. So it wouldn't necessarily go into our resolution, but could be accompanied with it.
That would work for me.
Okay. Tawny, you have your hand up. Is it about potential nominations? Oh,
No, I was going to say that I didn't feel that it was proper to try and nominate people tonight because I'm not prepared to provide counter arguments for why certain people shouldn't be nominated or the other way. And I think what I was going to say is that I do think an option that maybe Cameron might be more comfortable, and you kind of just touched on this, is having either someone from the executive committee represent the Spenard Community Council, like just be a part of the conversation somehow, just so that they can make sure that the best interest of the community, of our council area is served in these conversations. That was just going to be my proposal or suggestion, comment.
Mm-hmm. I think part of the reason it's a difficult conversation to have is just looking at the chat about different nominations, and some folks actually don't live in the district. They have businesses within Spenard, so that's why there are Spenard Community Council members, but they cannot represent West Anchorage. So it's a bit more complicated.
Yeah, and just I can just speak briefly to that. You know, there'll be an announcement, there'll be an application process. So that there'll be a time to submit applications. There'll be an interview process, and we'll go through a process of procedural rules, and then we'll ultimately vote on the person who will fill that seat. So there is a process, and that I can keep you informed on, and there will be an opportunity for this council to encourage folks to apply. And to recommend folks. I mean, that's something that I can bring forward and say, these are candidates that were shared with me by the council.
Great, that sounds good. Jared, do you have a question or comment on this?
I was just wondering how long it would probably take, I guess you estimate, to get somebody in there, because it is, just to echo Paul's sentiment, really important, because there's a lot of times, you guys are obviously swamped, everything's going on, Cameron, and we reach out to some of you guys, sometimes don't always get feedback timely, or some of our questions don't get answered at all sometimes, and I know you guys are pretty swamped, so it would be really, really nice to get someone in there as soon as possible. So I was just wondering, how long do you think that would take?
Yeah, so the announcement is needs to be for 5 days. And then there isn't a specific timeline identified, it looks like, on the applications or the interview process. I'll have to look through this more thoroughly. I don't see a specific time frame. But what I can tell you is that I feel exactly the same way as you do. I'm going to make sure this happens as quickly as possible. But I'll review this and see if I can find a specific time frame. There may be one in here that I'm not seeing, and I'll get back to you on that.
Okay, yeah, we've been out. I think it's been a few months already.
Yeah,
or at least months. So okay, thanks.
Oh, great. Well, I just heard our vote tally. The resolution passes 11-1. So the council supports the process to get someone in as acting mayor. I've seen Ira Perman's name a lot in our chat box, but if other folks have recommendations, I think it could be best to just reach out to Cameron if you'd like to give it to the executive board, and we can compile and help be a process to connect with Cameron. You can email spenardcc@gmail.com, but it did sound like from Cameron's description that there may be an opportunity for us to revisit this at our February meeting, where we could potentially recommend certain individuals. Okay. With that, I'm going I think, yes, we are wrapped up and pretty close on time. I'm going to move us into talking about the traffic calming resolution. Thanks everybody for that. That's my puppy trying to break into the room. Okay, he's gone. Thanks for your work on that, Cameron, and for the robust conversation, everybody. I'm going to bring us back to a topic Harriet Drummond had mentioned at the beginning about traffic calming. So we've talked about this for a couple months. One of the roles of the community council is recommending traffic improvements, local traffic improvements within our community council. And so we prepared here a draft resolution on traffic calming based on community input from previous resolutions we've passed over the years, as well as from a community survey that we sent out. And so what our intention is with this resolution is to have this list of projects considered for traffic calming. We as a council pass the resolution. We give it to the traffic calming coordinator at the traffic department with the municipality. They can set up speed studies for some of these roads in this summertime so that they can see how many cars, what speeds, what kind of the conditions are, and then they can recommend specific traffic calming measures that could be taken for these either intersections or roadways, and those could be things like speed bumps or curb bulbs across different crosswalks. There's a number of different things. And so we wanted folks to consider these items so that we could recommend these to the municipality. We then would still have to vote in the future to fund those projects, but it's a process about having local input on our road safety. So I'm looking at the chat and I see that Pamela moved to adopt the resolution as presented and Matt Duncan has seconded. Is there any discussion or questions from folks about any of these projects? Okay, hearing none, we do have another Google form for the vote that Arena could put in there. I don't know that there will be too much opposition then. But Arena, there it is. So the Google form is in the chat and you can go ahead and vote within that. And while we do that, I'm just going to turn it over for the next topic and then we'll tally up the votes. But I'm going to turn it over to Sean Baskey with the Department of Transportation to share a brief update about the Spenard Road Rehab Project. Sean, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Am I coming through all right?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So I came in and talked about the Spenard Road Rehabilitation Project back in November. And so I'm not going to recover the entire discussion about that. But just a quick reminder that we've got a website, spenardroad.com. So nice and easy to remember, spenardroad.com. So here you'll see a bunch of our information. My internet is apparently very slow when I'm trying to Zoom and my kids are on their games. But spenardroad.com and upcoming, if you go to the meetings tab right here, then you'll see that on January 28th, we've got a virtual online open house coming up. We'll have presentations at 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock. There's all the meetings information there. And we'll probably have some people maybe pasting in the links to all of that in the chat. But I think we'll also have some recorded presentations that you guys can look at any time that you want. That'll be the same thing that we're going to be showing at that time, so that way you don't have to show up specifically at those times. But then we'll have people available to answer questions in voice and chat and whatever else you guys need. But just quickly to cover the overall limit limits of the project. So it's Spenard Road from Minnesota to Benson. And so I just showed this figure last time. So just generally along Spenard, it's the next phase or the third phase. So this is a DOT and PF, a Department of Transportation led project in cooperation with the municipality of Anchorage. It's a federally funded project nominated through AMATS, which is another organization that we could have a long discussion about. But so it's a federally funded project led by the Department of Transportation. Even though this is a municipality of Anchorage road, the department or the municipality of Anchorage owned and operated roadway. The department runs federally funded projects. And so we're working closely with Muni staff to make sure that we're delivering everything that they want and need along the corridor. But basically, that's the gist of what we've got to say. I know we're a little bit behind schedule there, so I just wanted to throw a quick pitch in there for all of that. Outside of that, as a representative of the department, all questions are fair game. If you guys have any questions or comments or concerns, I'm used to fielding a lot of different things.
Thanks, Sean. I know that we're going to have you back over the next handful of years, specifically on this project, but you do
Absolutely.
have a lot of projects in Midtown Spenard as well. So you are a good resource for folks if they do have questions. I'll just go back to Tani's question from earlier about winter maintenance and just get your take on it, because I know that's always a question with the DOT, and just share some of the challenges or ways that we could try to advocate for more funding around that.
Yeah, it's a really difficult, it's a lengthy subject to cover. I'll just say that I'm with the highway design section, and so we've got a whole maintenance and operations division that takes care of maintaining our roadways. But ultimately, so 99% of the projects that you see out there on the roadways are federally funded projects at this point in time, given the state fiscal situation. And so there's the capital improvement budget side, and then there's the operating budget side. And so the operating budget side is state funded. And for instance, my staff and my team and we've got consultants working on this project. We're all basically federally funded. So when state fiscal reductions come to the department, then those go straight basically to our maintenance and operations staff, which you see the results of that over the years, largely over the last 10 years. So, the department has removed maintenance stations, cut, we've eliminated positions, for our plow truck drivers and all of that. We've tried to federalize as much as we can. All of our striping, our ditch cleaning a lot in the summers, our crack filling, we're federalizing as much as we can so we can get some of that staff directly onto federal budgets. But we've reduced operators, we've reduced equipment down to bare minimums. I just share that I think we've got 14 people on staff here in the municipality of Anchorage covering from the flats, the Kinnick Flats, all the way out to basically Bird. And you split that staff in half during the winter. And so we've got about 7 operators on any one shift. And then, we largely can't do overtime operations. They've largely cut a lot of those. So we've got staff that, may be willing to go out and work that overtime to try to clear things, but we just, we can't pay them to be out there, and then we can't cover that. So, imagine 7 operators trying to clear all of the roads that the state has to clear within the entire Anchorage area. And, it's a near impossible task. So, I mean, our maintenance staff are the heroes of our department for sure, because they do a lot with nothing.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, our tier 1 roads are the highways. So Seward Highway, Minnesota, a number of other ones. Once you get down to smaller roads, I think Northern Lights, Diamond, those are our tier 2 roads. And so until we clear off those highways, with only 7 operators on the road at any one particular time, you might see them doing round trips on those types of facilities over and over again, until they can clear those. And then, that might be a quarter to half of their shift. And then they move on to those lower tier roads. And we've got roughly equivalent to the same amount of lane miles or roadway miles as the municipality of Anchorage. Whereas the municipality of Anchorage has, 4 to 5 times the number of operators and equipment. But that's because, and they're able to do, a superb job. But our operations are high-speed operations. We don't have graders with the little, things that block the snow off the side of our graders. Most of our equipment is high-speed trucks with, nose plows and belly blades and things like that. So they're running 20, 30, 40 miles an hour through spaces, and then we don't even have the equipment to finesse at intersections and things like that. So we're pretty limited in our abilities given what we have.
Great, thanks, Sean.
Yeah.
Tani, do you have a different question? We have time for one question and then we'll move on.
Yeah, it's related to the sidewalk plowing, but different. One issue that I do notice that happens, and it must be frustrating for you and your crew as well, is that on the rare chances you do plow the sidewalks, the business parking lots, like the people who plow for the businesses, often put the snow, either they push it into where you just plowed the sidewalks,
Sure.
or sometimes it's built up so high that it inevitably falls into, even if it wasn't on purpose, it falls into the sidewalk area. So I'm not trying to start a riot here, but just curious, does the state of Alaska or your department have the ability to fine businesses who continue to do that as an issue? I know you're obviously underfunded, or you're underfunded and understaffed, so even the ability to track that is difficult. But I imagine
Sure.
that's an ongoing issue for you as well.
Yeah, so we have a right-of-way division, and there are enforcement action, and so that's a regular action that we have in support of our maintenance crews. So if they have a concern about a certain space, obviously they're not going to make every single call, on every single corridor, but we do have the ability to send out letters to those property owners. Obviously, we want them to go out and remove the snow themselves. It's the same thing with people putting signs in the right of way. We have a federal obligation because of the use of federal funds to enforce our right of way, and so we take it pretty seriously. And so we'll send them a letter. We'll request that they remove those items, and then with the threat of, if they don't, then we'll remove it and then send them the bill. Often it doesn't come to that, but that is an option for us. It's an excellent question. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Great, Sean. Looking forward to having you back so we can talk more about what we can do with this stretch of Spenard.
Yeah.
Thank you, and to the other folks with Dal who joined us.
Yep.
And
So January 28th.
yeah, I'll see you there. Hopefully
All right,
see
thanks.
some of the other Spenard folks on
Yeah.
that Zoom.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So our traffic calming resolution has passed 17-0. We also got to test out the voting process. So that's probably what we'll do next month for elections. So remember, if you're interested, email me about that, spenardcc@gmail.com. We have reached our neighborhood and community announcements section, and this is our opportunity to invite folks to say hi, to talk about any issues going on in your neighborhood. If you're new to Spenard or want to introduce yourself, now's a good time to just let folks know who you are, what you're interested in. We do ask these are just a couple minutes for announcements so you can get to everybody. And because we are in election season, if folks join our meetings for school board or for mayor, they also can introduce themselves during this time as well. So with that, I will open it up and see if anyone has any announcements. You can unmute and go for it. You could raise your hand. Dora, raise your hand. So I'll turn over to Dora. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Dora Wilson. I am a candidate for the Anchorage School Board for the upcoming municipal election in April. I am running for a seat on the school board because I believe I can bring needed perspective to the board. I've been a resident here of Anchorage for the past 25 years, raised 3 of my own kids, and they are now young adults doing fantastic. They went through the Anchorage School District. I've also been a therapeutic foster parent for the past 16 years. So I have had kids in the Anchorage School District for the past 20 years and continue to have kids in the district. I've worked with the School Business Partnership Program for the past 20 years, coordinating partnerships as a board member. That's been a definite passion of mine, spent a tremendous amount of time in the schools. Also a co-founder of AK Hopes and Dreams, which is a nonprofit that provides youth leadership summits to high school students. And it's an opportunity for us to provide skills to students that they don't receive in school, like financial literacy, networking skills, exposure to different careers. And career and life readiness is extremely important to me. I think it is, our students really need to be able to have the opportunity to not only be prepared for college, but also be prepared and be exposed to a lot of different industries and opportunities for them, because about 30% of our students actually choose college. So there's the other 70% of the students that we can have the opportunity to have them engaged in school focused and have a plan set forth for when they leave high school. So you are welcome to check out my website. I'm at Dora Wilson for Anchorage School Board. I'm happy to take a phone call. My phone number is 907-884-8584. So I welcome any kind of conversation or engagement. And if you have any questions, I know we're kind of running late here, so I can answer them now, or you can contact me and answer them later. So thank you for the time. I really appreciate the opportunity to introduce myself.
Great, thank you, Dora. Any other announcements? Bob's laughing at me. I see that. Paul.
Just brief, I wasn't going to say anything, but we are back open at the Carousel Lounge. So if you guys want to come by, we have had inspectors in every night, and Inspector Donahue called me last night and was very happy with our performance. We've had no outbreaks there. You can play pool with your mask on and do your thing. We are now down to 3 employees from our former 16 employees. It's been very, very brutal on us. So come down and patronize your local bars and restaurants in Spenard. It's what gives Spenard a lot of character. And we just really appreciate all your support. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. 2021. It looks like Dia Matt. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I just wanted to say hi. I used to be on the Spenard Community Council a very long time ago. I can't even remember how long ago. But my name's Dia Madison, and I own the house of Harley Davidson on Spenard, and I also own some property behind it as well.
Oh, thanks for joining us. I'd like to pick your brain about the old Spenard Community Council days.
I wasn't super active. I just attended some meetings, but I also was on the original traffic calming Spenard corridor planning group. So
awesome. Anything else? Anyone? Paul says carousel's open 4 to 11. Be there. I'll share the non-motorized plan is out for Anchorage. You know me, I love my non-motorized plans. It is a planning document for the city that combines the pedestrian, bicycle, and trail plan. Some of those are really old from the 90s. And so it's an opportunity to look at a more connected and safe community for all users of our roadways and trails. So I'll be taking a look at that, especially thinking about Spenard and how it compares to our Spenard corridor plan. And there may be opportunity for us to invite some of the municipal staff to come to our meetings and just share how the plan might impact Spenard. But that's out and available. And I think I shared it on Facebook. So if you're interested in digging in more, you can check it out there or follow up with me here. Anyone else? Eric, were you gonna? Yeah, welcome, Eric.
I just wanted to say thanks to everybody for giving a little bit of a positive shine. This is my first Spenard Community Council meeting. Today seemed like a good time for that. One of the reasons that I decided to move to Spenard, I just bought a house here 2 months ago, was some of the good work this community council has done, particularly in protecting that palm tree. But it's a wonderful community to be a part of. It's nice to virtually meet some of my neighbors. And I am a public interest attorney. I have been in Alaska for about 8 years. I've done immigration work, I've done criminal defense work, and now I do employment discrimination work. So just looking for other ways that I can get more involved in my community, and this seemed like a great place to be. So thank you, everybody.
That's great. Thanks, Eric. We're glad to have you. You're getting a lot of applauses. It's lovely. Any other announcements? I'm not seeing any. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Thanks. Thanks, Tom and Peggy. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate